everyone, today we're going to be learning how to make a Seifert surface of the trefoil knot, as in this picture. This is actually very beginner friendly. You will only need to know foundation, how to make a foundation chain, and you will need to know at least like single stitch. That's about it. And if you want to make prettier things like this, then it will be better if you know double and half double.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
We forgot to mention that you will also need to know triple crochet and a basic slip stitch.
So we'll link a video down below for you if you have never crocheted before and you need to learn some basics before doing this model. But we're going to assume that you know some basic crochet.
For this part, we'll need yarn ball, crochet hook, and yarn cutter, and darning needles to finish the work. And from my experience, I think the worsted weight wool is the best to practice on. And the matching hook I usually use is size 7, 4.5 millimeter. And we'll need the split ring stitch markers. It would be great if you can have a empty Temari ball like this one, this size, or a scrap yarn ball that you don't care about, almost this size, and a bunch of blocky pins. So to finish up our work, we can choose to have wire on the boundary that we crocheted around. So it will give us some strength, some stability of the structure. In comparison, this is one without the wire. And I actually used linen for this model so that it's more stiff and doesn't collapse. I usually use gauge 22, and in this model I use gauge 22 or gauge 20 half hard round copper. And of course you need a cutter, and you need some pliers to kind of join the ends together. And there's this little tool that I use to straighten the wire before I use it, which I found and it's very cheap. I found very useful.
I've put a list of the materials and links to the specific materials that Shiying uses in the description of this video.
We're going to start chain 49 or 50.
Okay.
We're going to do that. So the exact number of the stitches the chains that you're making doesn't really matter, so I will be lost in my counting. As long as it's more than 48, 49, you're good. I usually make a few extra, and you will see the reason. Okay, so I probably have 49 here. I'm gonna mark the chains so that there are 3 segments in between the 4 marks, and each one is 15 chains. And I'm gonna start from the first one, and I'm gonna have 15 in between and mark the second one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm gonna use a different color. And 1, 2, 3, 4.
At this point, your chain should look like mine. So you have 3 sections divided by 4 stitch markers of alternating colors. And between each pair of stitch markers, we have 15 chains.
So now I'm gonna explain how to set up the chain wrap. Here we've got a ball that has 2 poles marked with 2 colors, and which we'll call North Pole and South Pole. Here's the finished model that has 2 of the centers marked with a matching color. So this will be the North Pole, and this will be the South Pole. We're gonna start from the North Pole here and try to stretch into the South Pole like this. So this chain will be this leaf here, So there is like a twist here. And the same with this leaf, same with this leaf. So when we join a band in between North Pole and South Pole, we will have to have a twist for each of the band.
Mm-hmm.
And the orientation of twist doesn't really matter. As here I have an example with the opposite twists. And this one I will call S twist, and if you see, this one has the Z twist, or the left hand twist. So as soon as after you make a decision, you stick to that decision and without changing it, you'll be okay. For those of you who are not very familiar yet, you need to be familiar with the front and the back of your chain. The V is like a braid, and the back has a bunch of bumps. Mm-hmm. So in this video, we're just gonna call this front, this is back. Now the first step, we're gonna hold the end of the chain front facing up and pin it to the North Pole. Okay, it's gonna use this pin and pin here. And if you're a really cautious person, you can pin 2 of them. That way it's not going anywhere and not turning around. Mm-hmm. And then we're gonna move to the South Pole and with a twist. So if we don't have a twist, it will be like this. It's chain facing up. And you're gonna choose a twist direction and then twist 180 degrees and pin it there. So pin this purple one down here. And now if you look at the neighborhood of the purple one, it's back facing up. Now the next step is with the back facing up, we're gonna go back to the North Pole with another twist. Nice. And we're back to the North Pole with the front facing up. So I'm gonna pin these 2 stitches together.
At this point, where you only have 2 chains pinned, it's a good idea to check and make sure that both of your chains are in the same direction. So here we have the chain going from the right to the left across, and then if we twist it, we also have this one going from right to left. You can double check your own.
So you got a join with 3 legs, front facing up.
Very nice.
So you can choose to go this way or this way. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'm just gonna go this way. So I'm gonna go this way, going back to the South Pole, the purple pole, and then with the same twist. And then we're having back facing up.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm gonna join these 2 ends before I do anything else. So it'll be like this in the South Pole, back facing up, and the North Pole will be front facing up, 3 legs.
Now you should be able to rotate your ball and see that all 3 bands have the same type of twist. Also, it's helpful to double check that your North Pole has all 3 chains with front facing up, and your South Pole has all 3 chains with back facing up.
So we're gonna carefully move 1 and 2, but be very careful because you don't want to change any of the structure here, orientation, I mean. And then put the pins, stitch markers, in between, 1 stitch marker in between every pair of legs. So we got 3 here, and then double check front, front, front. That's good. And it can be loosened up. Okay, for this one, it's the same. So I'm gonna loosen this. And actually, I'm gonna do this stitch marker first before I take out all the pins, because I have space to do that. And I'm gonna put another stitch marker in before I take out the pins. That way there is absolute no mistake. Now I'm ready to take this pin off And you can put another stitch marker here, and I don't usually do it because this is where I will crochet next. So, well, you can put it here if you want. There's 3. We're done with setting up the chain. So I usually in the middle of any band I use single stitch, and the first and the last stitch I use double stitch, half double stitch.
The one stitch in the middle is
the middle is double. So that way, because at the beginning it's here, it will have to go out longer than like here, so it's more smoothed out. If you did it single all the way, the curve is gonna be just like more bent here. And I want to have an effect that's more smooth without like wiggling into this center. So that's why I did a double here. But it's a personal choice.
To recap, if you want to do your first round of crochet the same as Shiying, you're going to do a double stitch whenever you get to a vertex with a stitch marker. And then on either side of that double stitch, one before, one after, you're going to do half double. For all the rest of the stitches, you're just going to do single.
I'm going to put my crochet hook back into the project, and by that I mean I'm going to go through both of the loops because these 2 loops are identified as one. So I'm going to, after that I can safely remove all the extra stitches I made. I'm going to start crocheting. And it's really a personal choice here, but I usually start from 2 of the chains and with a loop on the hook. And that's my beginning of my next round. So I start from here, and I'm right-handed, I'm gonna crochet into the left. If you're left-handed, you're gonna crochet in that direction. I'm counting those 2 chain as a double stitch. So I'm gonna do a half double here. And I'm gonna do a single next. It's really, you worry about each stitch, one stitch at a time. You don't need to think about the rest. The rest might be complicated, but as long as you know what the next one is, you will be fine. And be very careful that you don't cross to the other side, because when you are crocheting along this end, the right end of the V, you don't all of a sudden like twist it and go to the left end of the V. If you're on the right end of the V, you always stay on the right end of the V. And again, at the end of my band, I usually end with a half double, but that's my personal choice. You can end up with a single or whatever. So here we are coming to the first intersection, first vertex. And if you lay out the vertex nicely, you will see the natural flow of the crochet is to cross this purple stitch marker and then go along this way. And here's why sufficient stitch marking is important. Let's say I have only 1 stitch marker here, and I am marking the correct spot. But after you do all these twisting and crocheting, you might lose the orientation of this joining by, let's say, this is what it should be, but you might end up having like shape like this, and you might want to go across this one. From the experience of my own working and then teaching, I know 100% for sure that sufficient stitch marking is necessary. Back to this vertex, and then this is. If you recognize, you can see the traffic, the roundabout traffic center, and then you're gonna go across. The rule is always stick to the right side, or if you're left-handed, on the left side, stick to the borderline of your work, and without crossing the traffic, crossing
like driving.
Exactly.
Don't cross the yellow line.
Don't cross. Yes, just follow the traffic rules. And yes, and then whenever we remove 1 stitch marker, quickly go to that spot, because if you pause right now and then come back after 5 minutes, you might forget where you were. So only remove right before you are ready to replace that stitch marker's position by a stitch. And here, whenever there is a stitch marker, I use the double stitch. Now we are away from the stitch markers, the single vertex. So we just have to drive along the path, along the road. And now I'm back to the yellow vertex.
Where did we start?
We start from here, and we travel to the purple one, and now we travel back to the yellow one from the other side, from the other edge. But every time when you are in the vertex, around the vertex point, you have to lay out the vertex neighborhood in this nice way. Make sure you have each one laid out nicely, and then the stitch markers are in between every pair that you haven't crocheted on. There's no stitch marker here because we already crocheted on this spot. Alright, so I'm gonna replace this one with a double. Now this part is secure, and usually around the vertex, when you only have one stitch marker left, there's not many chances of making a mistake again. So, and occasionally this does fall out, but you won't make a mistake anyway, so it's okay. So start with a half double and single. Alright, so I end this edge with a half double, and now I have laid out this nicely. I'm going to remove this one and replace with a double. And again, only remove right before you crochet, because if you take a break, chances are you forget where you were and might not insert your crochet hook in the right place. Now we have left the purple intersection. We're just gonna crochet along this edge, and because this edge, the other side of this edge is already crocheted on, there's almost no way you will make a mistake. And I guess it's also another chance of double checking if we made a mistake before, because right now I'm crocheting along the single loops, and if by any chance you meet a double loop, that means possibly we made a mistake when we were crocheting along the side.
What do I do if I get to this point and I realize that I made a mistake?
Well, I will usually just redo it. I did have a project that was very, very complicated, and I really don't want to redo it because it took hours to set up the chain, and I realized the twist was bad, so I actually cut yarns around that mistake and then cut yarns on the other end too, and I actually just patch up. But that's only way you think it's worth it, because that's also not easy to do. For this project, I would just redo it. Alright, so we are in the yellow again, and there's only one yellow left. That's great, so we don't have to make any decisions. Only have to make sure that we are inserting into the double loop where the yellow is, and replace with a double stitch. And so usually in the second half of this crochet, it's a lot easier than the first half, because if you didn't make a mistake in the first half, the second half is just driving along the right side of the road, because the left side is already taken anyway. You don't have any choice. Okay, one last purple, and it's really satisfying to remove one stitch marker after another. If you do it properly, this end and this end neatly line up, and there is like a tiny hole in between. So that's a sign of no mistake has occurred. So this whole thing was what I call one round. Just like in normal crochet, if you want to crochet a sweater or knit a sweater, you have a round after round after round, and normally in those like sweater or hat project, the round is a circle. But in here, it's topologically itself is also a circle. It's arranged in space in a non-trivial way. Okay, so I finished the last half double, and this is the last stitch, and this was our first stitch. And I usually, if I'm not done with the project, I usually finish the round with a slip stitch joining the first and the last. And I know I'm gonna do half a double next, so I'm gonna finish the round with a slip stitch and followed by a few chain. And this time you can take a break.
So just to clarify, you did a half double before you did the slip stitch?
Correct. So now we have finished the first round, and all the stitch markers are gone happily. And this one's already very nice shapes and stable by itself. It's very stable. It's not gonna fall apart. And it's topologically also equivalent to this one. And it's a good time to double check that our topology is correct. We got vertex here, vertex patch here, and then twist it the same way.
Mm-hmm. You can see them all like facing the same direction, or you kind of have rotational symmetry.
It has this, yes. It's like this carol symmetry here.
Right.
You wanna feel like it's spinning in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to be symmetric, so I only have to make a decision on how do I crochet on this one. Then everything else will be the same. And also I want to be symmetric this way and this way.
Mm-hmm.
So in particular, well, that means that this petal is going to be have this mirror symmetry. So then my decision I only have to make half of this petal, and then I just have to repeat.
Okay.
And that means 8 stitches in my case. So I call this half outer sequence. So I've got double, 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 double at the beginning, and I got double, 2 doubles in the same stitch point, and then 2 doubles here, and I've got 2 triples here and 2 triples here.
Okay.
You can imagine doing this over here. I'm gonna do the half double sequence, and I'm gonna finish the other half in the reverse order.
Mm-hmm.
And once you finish the other half, the nature of this trefoil knot is you're finishing the outer half, you're gonna go inside the inner. So we have to make a decision of the inner side.
Mm-hmm.
And because of symmetry, I only have to make a decision for half of it. So you can see after the outer petal, you're gonna go travel to the inner. And here is what I finished the whole inner actually, because I didn't do half of it. It's very short.
So you go outer, inner, outer, inner, outer,
Yes,
inner.
alternatively. So for the inner, it will be shorter and less stitch because of they're gonna be small here, and then I don't really want to make it too crowded here.
So when you go around the outside, you're adding stitches, and then when you go around the inside, you're
Subtracting, merging stitches. Yeah, combining stitches. So for the half of the inner, I start with double, half double, single, single.
Mm-hmm.
And then I combine the next 2 single into 1 stitch, and I combine the next 2 singles into 1 stitch. So that's the 8 stitch sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And then you reverse it and then finish the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Now after you're done with the inner, you're back to the outer again. But that's exact same thing that we just did.
Mm-hmm.
And because we want to have symmetry and because we love symmetry, so we'll just do this 3 times.
Just in case you haven't seen a stitch increase or a stitch decrease before, I wanted to show you those 2 stitches. We're going to take a look at the stitch increase first, which you're going to be using for the outer sequence. We're going to do 2 doubles into the same spot and do that twice. So that'll be 4 double stitches over the course of 2 spots. So here I'm doing my first double, And then we're going to do another double into that same spot.
This, by the way, is the same sort of thing that we did for the hyperbolic crochet, if you watched that video. Anytime you have a stitch increase, it's letting you have negative curvature, which is gonna let things flare out.
Now let's take a look at combining stitches called single two together.
The way that this works is you stick your crochet hook in, pull through, get a loop on that hook. Now you just do the same thing to the other one, straight away. So stick it through, yarn over, pull through. Now we have 3 loops on this crochet hook, so we're going to do the same thing as we do for a half double, where you yarn over and then just pull through all 3. Okay, and so that's our 2 single together, and we're going to do that again.
You should be good to go and crochet that whole second round now.
I want to quickly show you how to finish up before you change color or proceed to the boundary. So here is, I'm going to do the last stitch of this decorative round. And in my arrangement, the last stitch is a double. So I'm going to do that double. And here, these two chains were my first stitch. So here is really the first stitch. So I'm going to quickly show you how to finish up neatly. I'm going to cut yarn. And so here's my last V. Here was the first V. So I'm gonna make a new V connecting these two ends. So I'm gonna go through this first V, and my needle, you can just snap through it. And so this is the half V. I'm gonna finish the other half of V this way. So I'm going to go through these 2 holes. And voila, we have another V. And it will look just like all the other V's. And that way you have the full symmetry of the boundary. And all you have to do is tuck the end in somewhere, just like this one. So this one was the first one, this one was the last one. So all I have to do is use the needle to weave in the connecting V.
Yeah, can't even tell.
Yeah, you pull a little bit so that it looks just the same length as the other ones. Mm-hmm. So at the end will be like this without the border line. After you finish all 3 petals. And in order to really finish a project, you will probably want to do something along the boundary just to highlight the knot. And I usually use copper wire to go along the boundary and crochet along it, so to make it more supported. But for this particular model, I didn't, because I want to carry it with me in my purse, so I didn't use copper. And that's because I use linen in the body, so it's more stiff. If you do have this is a good place to start. And if you have other material that works for you, there's really no limit.
So we have our work, we finished the second round on it, and now we want to crochet the boundary. So I have my boundary color, I have a small yarn ball that can fit through the middle of my work. So that's going to help me out. And we have this hanging end from the second round. Don't worry about tucking that in right now. We'll just do it as we crochet the boundary. So now I need to cut my yarn. I have this, cut my wire. Gosh, okay, I have this whole spool of wire right here. And we just need to cut it, and normally I try to make a loop about the size of the project and then go about 3 times around. About this much wire will be good, but you'll figure it out as you make more of these, exactly how much you need. And after I take my wire off the spool, it's really coiled up, and so I like to just pull it like this to try to straighten it out a bit. You don't have to worry about getting it completely straight. It's actually going to need to curve a bit, but it's helpful to not have it coiled up tightly. Okay, so to put the wire onto this project, I find the place where I finished my second round, and I put my hook in just a few stitches before that. Now I take my second color and I lay that color over the hook and then pull through. So this is similar to if you are doing this without the wire, but now we take that end of the wire and we lay it over the work like this underneath the hook. Pull the yarn end over the hook and pull through, and then make that stitch tight. So now we've got our wire attached, but we're going to want to make sure to just bend that end, and that'll keep it from pulling through as we are crocheting, because it's a lot easier to just crochet it on than to try to weave it through stitches that are already there. And now we can just start doing single crochet all the way around the outside of our project. And we can see the sunlight creeping in here. Make sure you pick up that end from your first color. So in my case, it's the blue end. We're not leaving it out to dry, but we're incorporating it into our stitching. And this way we won't have to tuck in either of these ends. At the end, we'll just have one end to tuck in. Beautiful. So at this point, I need to tuck this wire in through the hole and also my yarn through the hole. So I'm just gonna take my yarn this way, following the path of the edge where I'm going to be crocheting, and then the wire is also going to need to go through this hole. I'm just going to make it a slightly smaller loop so I can fit it through, and then we're just going to pull it through this way. And it's going to get a little bit bent. Don't worry too much about it. It's going to be okay. It'll straighten out a bit as you're crocheting. Okay, so now you can see I just need to crochet along this way. Stick my hook through and just keep going. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Just make sure that you're picking up the wire this whole time too. It's easy to forget about him as it gets a little bit more intricate. Okay, maybe one more stitch here and then I'll switch. Okay, so now I have this, and now I just flip it to the other side so it's easier to reach. Pull that through, and voila! Now, hook goes through, pull the yarn, and we just keep going right here. Beautiful. So we are a third of the way done crocheting the boundary. I'll check back in once I finish the other 2/3. We've come to the almost end. You can see that we've gone almost all the way around. We just have this last little bit in here to do. I just pulled through the rest of my wire through this hole, and now I just have a few more crochet stitches to do before we finish it up. Okay, so at this point there's just about 4 more stitches before we reach the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and tie off my wire right now. I just kind of like let it rest and see where it crosses the start of the wire, and then I just twist them together. I think Shiying uses pliers for this, but I found that I can just use my hands and that's fine. So whatever you want to do makes sense. I'll just give it a few good twists, and then you can see that. Might try to zoom in. And now I'm just going to take my wire cutters, which also happens to be a nail clipper. I think we have wire cutters at home, I just haven't really looked. This works fine. And then now we just slide right here and clip it off. Beautiful. Now you can just take that end and tuck it in, bend it to be in line with the rest of the wire, just like that. And we'll just crochet over that as we do the last few stitches. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so you can see that that end is just right next to the rest of the wire, and I just crochet over it. And once you put yarn over it, you won't even be able to tell where it was. And last one, right here. You see, we just have the beginning and the end, and now we just need to tie it together. So I'm gonna put my hook in, do one more slip stitch, pull that out, and then I'm just gonna need to cut this end. Okay, so I have this loose end. We're just gonna need to patch up this edge in the same way that we patched up the last round. Now you can straighten out your guy and make sure it's all right. There we go. We have our finished model.
We hope that you've enjoyed following along and learning how to make this really neat shape. If you would like to learn more about it and see some of Shiying's other work, then head on over to my other video linked in the description.